How do we organize our memories? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So this is one of those themes that I mentioned in the last vlog might come out of the process I've been going through lately, sorting through a whole lot of things at my father's old house. Sorting through his physical possessions, but then also sorting through things that I had stored in his garage. Now, given that I'm traveling around a lot at the moment, it's been fine to leave those things in his garage for a while, but I really need to sort through and organize them, come up with a more permanent solution. And amongst those things that I had stored at his garage were a bunch of old documents and also photos. And so one of the things I've been doing is sorting through those documents, figuring out whether I need to keep any of them or if I can get rid of them. And then also with the photos, I've been sorting through those. And what I've been doing is taking high resolution photos of the photos so that I can keep those high resolution digital copies just on the cloud. That takes up very little space, and I can access them from anywhere in the world. And that way I can get rid of the hard copies and they don't need to be stored anywhere. And this is both quite a tedious process, going through and doing that, but also quite enjoyable in many ways as well, because of course as I go through these photos, it brings back many memories of different things I've experienced at different stages of my life, different lessons learned, and so on. And so as I've gone through this, and look, I think this is quite common for many of us when we have a lot of old photos, that often they just get stored away, and it's very rare for us to actually look at them. And even more so, if they haven't been organized in some way, it's very difficult to even find a particular photo or image that you might be looking for. And yeah, this process made me think about this because I'm quite aware at this stage, I've gone through, I've taken all the photos of the photos, and now I have them in digital form. If I just leave them as one mass of photos, I will look at them and get as little benefit from them as I did when they were just sitting in boxes, because it won't be easy for me to find what I'm looking for, and so they'll just probably sit as one big mass of photos. And so what I'm going to need to do as another phase of this process is I'm going to need to organize them, and that will mean putting them into folders, and that could be, there's a variety of ways I could organize them. It could be just folders based on sort of the year they were taken, or it could be around a theme of some sort from different stages of my life. So for example, some of the photos that I've been looking at, some of course were from early childhood and when I was at school and then when I was at high school. Some of them relate to, and look, these will be things that probably a lot of people don't know about me, getting a little bit of an insight into my background. Some of them be from when I played a lot of basketball for several years when I was at high school. And so I've got photos from that era. I have photos from, again, something people probably don't know about me. For a period of time, I was quite active as a sculptor, producing artworks. And so photos from that period as well. Photos from when I was very busy teaching Kung Fu. And yeah, and other things as well. And so there's all these different periods, and yeah, really cool memories, photos with friends, photos with family at different stages. And it could be that possibly I organize them into folders around that as well. And by organizing them into folders, it'll be much easier for me if at some point, if I'm just wanting to browse through out of interest, I can look through according to time period or theme, or also if I perhaps need some photos for a special event or for whatever reason, I'll be able to find them. Yeah, maybe to show to someone else for some reason, whatever the reason is, but they'll be much more accessible to me, and I'm probably much more likely to look at them if I have these different folders to look at them in rather than just one mass of digital files. Anyway, from this I thought about how this ties in with Qigong. That's what I tend to do. Qigong's a big focus of my life, and so I often both learn lessons from Qigong and the principles within that I apply to other aspects of my life, and I also think about how different things I experience within other aspects of my life relate to Qigong. Because there's so many different beautiful principles and movements and practices that we find within Qigong, and we can use them in a variety of ways. And if you've done Qigong for a long period of time, you've probably come across and practiced quite a variety of different movements and practices. And it becomes very easy to start to forget about some of them. I mean, maybe you remember them at some level, but if they're all just one big accumulated clutter of different practices and principles, it's like, it's pretty hard to access them. So it's quite useful to organize them by theme, by purpose, and so on. And that's what we fortunately tend to often do within our Qigong practice. And it's such a common thing that we may not realize we're doing it. But this is one of the big reasons why often different practices or movements are grouped together into a set, because they work together on different principles that relate to each other. And by having them together as a set, of course, this gives us an ability to work them together in a harmonious way. But it also gives us an opportunity, because sometimes we might want to pull out just one movement, one principle within practices to apply in a certain way. It also makes it easier for us to find that one that we're interested in so that we can apply it in the way that we want to. Because instead of having to dig back through every single individual movement or principle that you might know, you can go, okay, what was the overall theme of that? How might it have been grouped together? And we look at these sets of practices, and then we can find the specific one within that might be of interest or benefit to us at that time. And so, for example, within the Long White Cloud Qigong syllabus in school, we group practices together in a variety of ways. And there are a few sort of loose ones in there that sort of we tend to do by themselves, but there are many that we group together. And so one way that we group them together is their main overall purpose or focus. Within Qigong, there are three main historic applications, one being to health and well-being, one being to Kung Fu or martial arts. We can also tie that in with just high performance, and then the other being to spirituality or philosophy, or having that richer understanding of ourselves and life. And while there's a lot of crossover between these applications, some practices more specifically focus on one than another. And so this is one of the ways we group the practices that we do at Long White Cloud Qigong. We group them as ones that are part of the healer's path, ones that are part of the warrior's path, and ones that are part of the sage's path. Now again, lots of crossover, they're all relevant in different ways, but it's one way we can group them. Then within those practices, we group them as sets of practices within that focus. So for example, in the healer's path, we have, and again, there's a wide range of practices that we could include within this, but we have some main ones that we focus on. So we have a practice called waking the Qi, which is really good for simply activating our energy, giving it that spark of activity to get it flowing freely and well. We have a set of practices called 12 Rivers Qigong, where there's one movement that works with each of the organ meridians. We then have a practice that's called Between Heaven and Earth, and this works with each of the 8 extraordinary meridians and the way that those connect to the energy of heaven and earth to refresh and rebuild our energy and fill our energy field. And we then have, it's a category of practices really, which we call Enter the Flow. And these ones are a more free-form style of practice, which is like working with the clouds and rain that move within our energy field. And so we group them together, and by having these groupings, you can think of this much like if you're looking for a particular folder or file on your computer, and you can go, look through different folders, like, okay, I know it's this category, and then within that, another category. Let's open up that folder. I can find what it is I was looking for. Now that's just the ones that we do in the Small Universe program, focused on the healer's path, all very focused on the specifics of how our energy flows, how it gathers. Other practices have a different overall focus. They still affect things like the meridians and things like that, but the focus is somewhat different. So in the Fire Qigong practices, within that, we do some quite active dynamic breath work for activating our energy, and there's a whole set of different breathing practices we do as part of that. But if we know overall, we were doing that as part of that process of activating, we can find the specific one that we're interested in. We also do wild animal play, where we focus and we do a range of different movements and practices relating to a series of different animals that are quite vigorous, and they develop our energy in a vigorous way, and they also develop our bodies physically. We also do Iron Shirt Qigong, and so on. And so it goes through the different practices. Elemental Alchemy, we do practices focus on Wuji, some on Taiji, some on Wuxing, or the 5 elements. And it's a way that we can group that knowledge, our memory of those principles together, so that we can understand and find our way between them more easily. Once we have that knowledge, once we have them grouped together, there's a variety of ways that we might let this flow out into our practice. Again, it could be sometimes we're just picking different individual parts from quite different places to put together into a practice that's very specific to what we need at a given time, or maybe to help someone else. Or often what we'll also do to refresh our memory is we'll go through, and within our practice and within our teaching as well, we'll practice a whole set of movements or practices related to a particular theme. And in doing that, we constantly refresh our memory, and that's like pulling out a photo album and looking through all the photos and remembering all those beautiful experiences. So anyway, that was just a little something that I thought about as I was going through this process of sorting, and soon I'm going to have to organize all these photos that I've been taking photographs of. Maybe there's something useful in there for you. Maybe it can help you to understand some of the ways that you can approach your Qigong practice. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you on another vlog soon.